The Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Limited list is one of the biggest talking points always whenever it comes time that players feel like that the format needs to shift, and honestly, it is that time as we're heading into the whole entire format with Blazing Dominion in the next couple of weeks. So for my ban list prediction this time, it's going to be excluding cards that come in Burst Protocol, Legendary Modern Decks 2026, Maze of Miratos, and also Rarity Collection 5. So let's get into it and let's talk about it. Now, before we get into the predictions, I do want to talk about one little thing on how long can your product be called new. Now, this is in an article by Amy Mudge, and the short answer, according to the long-standing FTC guidance, is 6 months from launch. So a lot of cards in the Legendary Modern decks have a 6-month window, more or less. Now, they do give a little extra leeway if you do a test launch first, but that didn't happen with the Legendary Modern deck, but it did get delayed in other regions, so it adds an additional month for the other places. So this means cards like Hornet Drone and even Habakiri won't be on this Forbidden Limited list prediction, because honestly, I don't really think it's needed because we're going to be having a whole entire format shift with the brand new Blazing Dominion set. But next up, I do want to mention is that I won't be hitting core set or side set secret rares. Gem Knight Nephrim is an example of a side set secret rare, and also Marshmallow Yummy is a core set secret rare that I don't think is going to get hit because Konami might have plans reprinting this in the future, so it's easier to access for the community. And finally, before we get into it, at the end of each segment for the Forbidden, Limited, Semi, and Unlimited sections, I will be putting a tier list so you guys can have a recap of what I put in each category. To start off with the Forbidden section of my predictions, I want to talk about both Archlord Christia and Different Dimension Ground, as both of them are floodgates that many players are currently using. Now, Archlord Christia says neither player can special summon while it's face up on the field, and we've been seeing Branded and Dracotail use this card insanely well, along with just anyone who wants to run the Branded engine to dump it off of Grand Guganol, the Dust Dragon. And Different Dimension Ground just banishes any monster that is sent to the graveyard, and realistically, a lot of players have been wanting this card gone for quite some time, and it's missed out on 2 lists, so realistically, these are the first 2 options for my predictions. The next card to talk about on the Forbidden section would happen to be Droll and Lockbird, and also Nichiria Rosewhip. Now, Droll and Lockbird is one of the many cards that a lot of players really want to see gone because of how powerful it's become over the course of time, like how Maxi was all the years ago. Now, this card prevents both players from adding from the deck to the hand except by drawing it, so it shuts off a lot of cool strategies that players really want to do, but they can't because this card is stopping them. And same with Nichiria Rosewhip, I think this would be a very, very good pre-hit to decks like Cool Tune that want to summon it out from the deck and just be able to floodgate the opponent from activating more than one spell or trap card each turn. Recently, Master Duel did ban this, so I definitely think that the TCG and OCG will follow suit when the time comes. Another floodgate I would really love to see gone, that happens to be Spell Canceller. Now, this card makes it where spells and their effects on the field cannot be activated, and it negates all spell effects on the field. Now, we've seen this before in Imperial Order, where it just shuts down all spell cards, and your opponent can't really do much about it because most of the removal that we have is either monster removal, which is going to get hit by the K917 Ripper, or even just all spell cards, so it's kind of hard to go over it. Now, you also have the Kaiju monsters and Lava Golem, but not everyone sides it or prepares for this specific scenario. But hopefully that we do see this card banned along with the other floodgates that I mentioned before this card. Even though Marshmallow Yummy isn't going to be appearing on my Forbidden and Limited list, we're going to be talking about Cupsy Yummy Way. Now, this is one of the main bridges that everyone's using to get into the Yummy engine, and honestly, I do think that some bridges do have to burn. And this allows you to search 2 of your Yummy cards, or monsters, from your deck to your hand, then discard 1, so it gives you ample opportunity just to interact with the opponent if they have something, so you can bounce it back, summon out the Snatchy and a level 1 back, then you can Synchro immediately after into whatever you need. Banning this card definitely hurts Yummy quite a bit, but I think the deck will still be playable, but they would have to play it in a different way because I'm still leaving the 3 Marshmallow and the 3 Cupsy just being able to be used. Now, Cupsy Yummy Way isn't the only other Justice Hunter deck card that I'm hitting on this Forbidden Limited list, as I'm going to be also wanting to see K917 Ripper banned, because honestly, we've gone so far from banning Apollosa, Borona, and even Borreload Savage from the format, and we just went right back to playing a negate in the extra deck that is also consistent CPs by detaching a material to search any K9 card from your deck to your hand, giving you insulation for your whole entire combo, and you could just summon out a second one along with the number C104 and just add it with 2 more types of negates. Now, realistically, I do want to see this card banned because I don't see them hitting Azuna with a possible ultimate rare coming on the way, but also they've done enough hitting the deck that you could essentially just say a case for K9 can go back to 3 if they really feel like it. Now, you can't talk about a Forbidden Limited list without mentioning Fiendsmith. Now, Fiendsmith's Lacrima got reprinted in Rarity Collection 5, so we know that's going to be safe for quite some time once again, but I want to talk about Fiendsmith's Requiem. This is the main bridge into the Fiendsmith engine, and I think it's time for the player base to move on to other engines that could facilitate interesting and more unique combos. Now, this allows you to either go into a Fiendsmith Desiree to blanket negate the board up to the number of link arrows that it has equipped to it, and also it can allow you to go into a DDD Wave High King Caesar, which is currently one of the prizes that you get from the Day 2 YCS pack, and I don't think Konami would want to invalidate that as a prizing, because why have a pack when it has a forbidden card in it if you make Day 2 at an event? Now, another aspect that's a little late of an inclusion to the forbidden section of the predictions is Azamina Illa Sylvia. Now, this card is a card that many players run with the Sinful Spoil engine because of the when your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you could tribute this card, negate that effect. Now, it's just another way to get around specific cards that the opponent's playing, like a Hand Trap, or even Nibiru the Primal Being from wiping your board, along with a copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, because I've done it before, and many other people at my locals has too, and honestly, it's definitely a really interesting take that this card could potentially get banned because of how useful it is in the whole entire Azamina engine. It does hurt White Forest in a way because they do run this card, but it also hurts a lot of the decks that do run the Bellstar engine, and they would have to convert into a different engine in order just to have consistency for more link pieces or just other fodder for other engines. Now, each segment of the Forbidden Limited List prediction, there's going to be one wild card, and this one happens to be Instant Fusion. Now, Instant Fusion has always been a card that has swayed back and forth of seeing play and not seeing play, and currently people are just summoning out things like Millenniumize Restrict as a way to counter hand traps. Now, I do have a reason for why this is here, because it kind of curves a couple FTKs that were permitted because of this card. Sure, there's other ways that you can permit these type of FTKs by sending the fusion monster to the graveyard and copying it with things like Supreme King Starving Venom or the Tyrant Neptune, but the Tyrant Neptune has to tribute one of those cards. So realistically, I definitely think that it's time that Instant Fusion could go, especially with a couple options that I want to bring off the Forbidden section. And this wraps up the Forbidden section of my predictions, so let's get into the Limited section. So to start off the Limited section of the Forbidden Limited list, we're going to be talking about both Branded Fusion and Rahu Dracotail, as honestly, they're kind of the same card, but just for different archetypes. Branded Fusion allows you to fusion summon a fusion monster that mentions Fallen Albaz as a material, using 2 monsters from your hand, deck, or field as material, and Rahu Dracotail allows you to summon 1 Dracotail monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand, deck, or field. Also, both of them lock you into fusion summoning until the end of the turn. Now, one of the things about these cards is that they're really powerful, and we've seen both of them at 1 in the OCG, and honestly, that's where they should be because they're powerful fusion spells, and realistically, I do think that these two will go down to 1 no matter how you look at it. So next up, I want to talk about Malice. Now, Malice is one of these decks that has hit after hit and is still being played, and honestly, one of the ways that you could do it is either banning Red Ransom, or you could just limit the Malice P Chessie Cat. Now, March Hare is not on this Forbidden Limited List prediction because it is a core set secret rare that still doesn't have a reprint, so the consumers are safe. Now, one of the things I do want to note is that this is just another way of the Allure of Darkness. This card banishes a Malice card from your hand, and you draw 2 cards. Allure of Darkness, you can activate it, draw 2 cards, banish a dark from your hand. So it's realistically almost the same thing, and I do want to say that hitting the names down more is a really good option because it's going to be less consistent of seeing a name, and this would put you down to 1 Dormouse, 1 Chessie Cat, 2 White Rabbit, 2 Underground, and also still have the 3 March Hare for a little more accessibility. So the next card I have limited happens to be Dimensional Fissure. Now, you can also put it in the Forbidden section because honestly, it is just a trade-off because well, it's not a monster you could summon. It's not a card that you can thrust into. It's just there. You have something like the Despair Uranus, but really it's just a card that says any monster sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Now, realistically, I do think that this card should be banned, but I think they're gonna slow roll it instead and put it down to 1 because there is some good things about it, but also it's mostly just bad things because, well, it's a floodgate that does hinder a lot of decks in the format. Now, the main reason why I have Instant Fusion on the Forbidden section of the list is because I would like to see Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom return off the Forbidden Limited list. Now, I was hoping this card was going to come back all the way back in 2023 when we got the new Zark support in Age of Overlord, but they didn't. Now, this is mainly probably because of the FTK with Lyreless Independent Nightingale, where you can summon out 2 copies of this card and also copy the effect of 1 monster on the field or in the graveyard, and it becomes the name, has its effects, and also this card gains piercing damage. So one of the things that people would do was pair it with Lyreless Independent Nightingale and just burn for 4,000 a copy. Now, realistically, if you do cut ties with a few pieces here and there, it makes it less consistent, but there are still ways to do it, but you have to jump through more hoops to do that. It's slightly a no-brainer that Fairy Tail Snow has a possibility of coming off the Forbidden Limited list due to the new support in Blazing Dominion for the Fairy Tail archetype. Now, this does go, in fact, with the couple reprints that could happen because Fairy Tail Tales needs a name change or text update. Now, one of the things is that this card was forbidden multiple times back in 2020, I think, and also back when tier limits were around and players were using it in the deck as a free extender and also a form of interruption. Now, I do think that nowadays it's fine that this card is legal to use, especially with Monster Gate, Reasoning, and That Grass Looks Greener are all limited, and honestly, I don't really see many decks using it outside of Fairy Tail itself, or a random mill pile like Lightsworn or even Infernoid. And despite the fact this is one of Jesse Cotton's favorite cards, so it would make sense that Konami would bring it back to 1 so he can get a giant card of it when Nationals comes around. Another card I really would like to see come off the Forbidden Limited list happens to be MX Saber Invoker. Now, this card is a really powerful card, but not really anymore. It takes 2 level 3 monsters, and once per turn you can detach a material from this card to special summon a 1 level 4 Earth Warrior or Beast Warrior from your deck in defense position, but it's destroyed during the end phase. Now, many players were thinking this card would have been in the Legendary Modern deck, so it would have been released off the whole entire Forbidden Limited list because of it, but it clearly missed out on a reprint, and I think it was a missed opportunity to give it a reprint in that set and having it legal at the same time to help players who really want to play X-Saber, especially with this card, because there's some really good options that you could summon off of this, and let alone just play it in decks like Zodiac, which could potentially get more support in the future, and also just other decks that focus on Earth Warriors or Beast Warriors. One of the many cards that I do talk about on my channel happens to be Heavy Storm. Now, I did talk about this multiple times in short form, but I want to talk about this card in general. It destroys all spell and trap cards on the field, and the OCG has had it at 1 for a little bit now, and honestly, it's just a inclusion sometimes because sometimes you want it, other times there's other cards that are better. Now, destroying all spell and trap cards on the field can be a really great blessing if you open it going second, but it's a really bad blessing if you already have an established board and the opponent drops it or you draw into it, forcing you to either, well, keep it for later or just making it where you have to activate it and lose out on resources. Now, overall, Heavy Storm is a really powerful card, but I definitely think that with time passing, it's going to be a card that some players want to side. Now, for my wild card in the limited section happens to be Tearlament's Kick Close. Now, Tearlament Kick Close is going to be coming back off the Forbidden section because we are banning the Instant Fusion, and I think that we're going to be seeing more support for this deck in the future, especially with the OCG releasing cards like Tearlament's Rhino Heart to 2, and also Asian English is finally going to be printing the Tearlament cards in one of their packs that they're going to be getting really soon. Now, it's no surprise that a lot of people are turning their head to Tearlament because, well, it was one of the most feared decks and very consistent for the time that it was in 2022 into 2023. But realistically, I think it might be time that Tearlament is slightly fine, that they can give them one of the best pieces that they had in their whole entire archetype back to them, only at 1. And this means you would have 1 Merly, 1 Shuren, 1 Havness, and 1 Kick Close for consistency, along with the 3 Tier Cache and also the 3 Planet. That wraps up the whole entire limited section, so let's get into the semi-limited section for my predictions. Now, I couldn't really think much on the semi-limited section outside of something like Zodiac Wrapped Pier. Now, this is a card that was limited all the way back in 2017, and I definitely think it might be a good time for this card to come back as well. I am expecting new Zodiac support in the future, especially with OCG moving it to 2 recently, but realistically, I think Zodiac is past its prime outside of Zodiac Broadable, that this card could finally come off the Forbidden Unlimited list. But even though I have this card going to 2, it's definitely going to be a card that we could see going to 3 in the near future. So the semi-limited section was always going to be the shortest one of the bunch because I don't think that many cards should go to 2 in general. They should either be limited, unlimited, or straight up banned, because putting it to 2 kind of just doesn't solve an issue, or just putting it to 2 and just leaving it there for years doesn't really sit well with me. So the unlimited section will be a whole host of cards that can come off the Forbidden and Limited list. Now, there's a lot of cards to talk about and go over for the unlimited section of the prediction I have, and honestly, it's definitely one of the things I really want to talk about because there's a lot of cards just sitting there and not really doing a thing. Kind of like Unchained Soul of Shavara is currently at 2, when it's probably safer just to put it to 3 with the new Unchained support that's going to be coming out sometime this year. Fiendsmith's Lacrima went to 1 on the last list because they banned Moon of the Closed Heavens, and honestly, this card can go back to 3 because you only will maximum play 1. Summon Sorceress has an errata, and it's still at 1 for some reason, so I definitely think that this card will come off the Forbidden Limited list. Now, since we're banning Requiem on this list, I definitely think that Moon of the Closed Heavens will move off the list either to 1 or to 3, and it's just going to be used as a utility piece for other type of decks that want to summon Underworld Goddess of the Closed Heavens. Now, after that, we also have cards like Striker Dragon, with Spirit of the Blue Eyes having a better link arrow, but this card's still pretty useful. I definitely think Konami will move it up in numbers because the extra deck for Rocket decks are super tight. Link Kribo was only banned to save face for Snake Eye, and honestly, putting it back to 3 wouldn't really do much, especially with Cups of Yummy Way going down to 0, and realistically, it was never a problem in the first place. We have Sun Avalon Dryas and Sunvine Healer. Both of these were hit because Europe had a lot of strings of the Sun Avalon Rika deck topping, and honestly, I think it's time, especially with the Mulcharmies and just many other cards to counteract the deck, they can just go back to 3. Also, the extra deck's super tight, so they might have a little problem finding room. Pearly, Sleepy, and Delicious Memory can go back to 3 tomorrow, and no one will definitely play Pearly. Even though that the deck is a few years old now, it still doesn't compete to a lot of the current contenders. Divine Wind in the Mist Valley has been at 3 in the OCG for quite some time, same for Mastoodle, and honestly, I don't know why the TCG has kept this card locked up for so long. Nichiria Sacred Tree, we have gone past the Ishizu Runic deck that was running the Nichiria cards, and honestly, even with the Roserip ban, this card could potentially just go back to 3 and still won't do anything. And even a card like Ultimate Offering, I know Jesse Cotton talked about this card, but I also had it on my predictions, and realistically, nowadays this card really doesn't do much, and I definitely agree. It's definitely a card that Konami could bring back, and they even did a Lost Art promotion for it, so it could be a possibility that this could be one of the many cards that we see come off the Forbidden section. And if it even doesn't seem like a wild card pick, I kind of just want to have Infernity Launcher included on here because it recently received a stamped art alternate art in the Rarity Collection 5, and honestly, this card, I don't know why it's here on the limited section. I definitely think it could definitely go back to 3, and I'm definitely expecting new Infernity support to make the deck a little better with the new ideals of Series 14. Now, that has been my Forbidden Unlimited list predictions for the month of May. Now, I would have put this out earlier, but we did have delays in products with Europe and also South America and also Africa because the Legendary Modern decks just now released in Europe, South America, and a couple other places, and Brazil is finally getting theirs on May 6th. So realistically, I do think it's going to be after YCS Columbus, after a brand new format has dropped, and many shifts and changes are going to happen, especially going into that next format. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Konami does on the actual Forbidden Limited list, because I really want to see a huge list that's a big shakeup to the format, because we haven't had one of those in quite some time. Now, you can count the Floodgate one that just nuked so many of them out of the format, but I definitely don't think that that was much of a shakeup, more of a, oh, we forgot these, so let's add them as well. But anyways, I've been BoltSpider. I hope you guys did enjoy this prediction video, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you all for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, hit that like button down below, and if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button, and make sure to hit the bell to get notified whenever I upload. I would also like to thank FGH for supporting the channel through the channel memberships, as it's only 99 cents a month, and you can also join my Discord server, which is down in the description of every video that I post. But anyways, I'll see you all in the next video, and goodbye. You know, I did this whole entire video on my Banos predictions, and I forgot one important card, being Metamorphosis, and honestly, it could go to 3.